matters. Good evening, everybody, and to those who may still be joining us, thank you for joining us today on this webinar on the Common Platform. The Common Platform, my name's Sonal Dashani and I'm a member of 25 Bedford Row Chambers, and our speaker today is going to be Paul Kelleher, Queen's Counsel, who is going to tell you about the Common Platform, not as to its functionality, a means by which all digital online system will be in one place. So rather than having the digital cases we all are now very familiar with, this would allow all agencies at all stages of proceedings to access one system together. Paul will take us through a system which, if not should have been fully implemented, certainly should have been implemented to a greater degree than that which we've seen. Certainly we anticipated a greater rollout than that which we know to be the case, and Paul will take us through that. Before he does that, just a bit of introduction about Paul for those who don't know him. He's a member, as I say, of 25 Bedford Row and a highly experienced practitioner in all areas of serious crime, including terrorism, drug trafficking, fraud, and serious offences of violence and sexual abuse. He's a member of the Bar Council and has been a member of the CBA committee since 2010. In particular, he has a great role with the CBA in dealing with technological advances in the criminal justice system, and has represented the Bar during the development of the Crown Court digital case system. He was involved in its design, initial testing, and also then the gradual implementation. He continues to be heavily involved, and therefore you may think a perfect speaker for today to help us with the Common Platform. And he's going to essentially give us where we are with the Common Platform today. It's not a how to use Common Platform, and I can say, I think both on behalf of Paul and I, we are both yet to receive a case that involves the Common Platform, so neither of us have had access to it. So as an interesting show of those who are in attendance today, I think we're going to just start with a poll question. And Varuna, if I can ask your assistance in launching the first poll question, please. So, but for many of you, you may look at this question and smile wryly at the question. And question one is, have you ever been deregistered from the Common Platform? Answer yes or no. If you put your answers in, please, and we'll go to question two and give you some results. There are only two questions today. It'd just be interesting to see that those of you who have used Common Platform, to what extent the deregistration process, it continues to live strong. And as far as that is concerned, Varuna, are you able to post the results of that poll? Interesting, so half. So it would seem just under half of those present today have been deregistered from the Common Platform. Those of you who have been deregistered will know, I myself find myself included in that. We get an email warning us that 90 days are up, and if you haven't logged in, and if you're in my situation, for example, where you've not had a Common Platform case, there's no reason to log in, they automatically deregister you and you have to re-register. So the next question is, and this will really identify those who haven't quite kept up, of those who were deregistered, how many remain deregistered, i.e. they have been deregistered because 90 days have passed and because of, no doubt, other pressing matters, they haven't got round to re-registering. That's question number two. I'll just give you a couple more seconds to answer that. Thank you very much. And Varuna, just out of interest, 30% remain deregistered. Well, I myself, as of today's date, remain deregistered. So those 30%, I'd like to think, are in excellent company, because if you're not using it, you don't need to be registered. And it'll be interesting to see, maybe I'll do it, Paul, I don't know, maybe I should be an experiment to see if I keep deregistered for long enough, what will happen when I then try and re-register. Will my computer explode? Well, remains to be seen. But with those questions, just as Paul, you have an understanding now of what our attendees and their involvement with the Common Platform, I'll hand over to Paul. Before he starts, of course, please feel free to ask any questions that you want to during the chat function. I will, of course, keep an eye on them, and if there are questions that we can ask as Paul is dealing with his talk, then I will deal with them then, and Paul will also keep an eye on them, and otherwise we'll have a short Q&A session at the end. Paul, over to you.
Well, thank you very much for those who've attended today. Our website says, and the title of today's talk is The Common Platform, the next big thing, or the latest white elephant. It's deliberately provocative, as I'm aware that the Common Platform, where it has been introduced, has driven many solicitors in particular to distraction. And they'd probably argue it is the biggest white elephant yet. But tonight I want to explain to you what's actually going on. The Common Platform, as you may or may not know, is a key element of HMCTS's court reform programme. The new digital case management system is intended to bring together all the relevant information about a criminal case for court, the Crown Prosecution Service, the police, the National Probation Service, and other partner organisations within the criminal justice system to access. It's intended that it will provide a single, collaborative digital platform for both Crown and Magistrates courts. The wider rollout of the Common Platform and the replacement of the Crown Court digital case system is to some degree underway. Now, I ought to begin with a confession. I've never used the Common Platform. Because it's only been introduced, I'm going to try to avoid jargon where I can, such as rolled out. Because it's only been introduced in a few trial courts, no case I've done is on the Common Platform, and there's no way that you can access a case on the Common Platform unless one of your cases is there. You can't go and, as it were, view or practice on someone else's case. So what, you may well ask, do I have to contribute? Well, the purpose of this evening's seminar is threefold: to explain what the Common Platform's for, what it is, and what it's for, to let you know the extent to which it is already in operation and what we've learned so far, and to set out as best I can what's going to happen next. Finally, I'm going to ask you to help me to help you to get the best out of the next generation of IT in the criminal justice system. Now, the answer to what I can contribute today is that I have been striving to engage with HMCTS for the past couple of years to ensure that the Common Platform is fit for its purpose. Its purpose being to improve the functioning of the criminal justice system for the benefit of everyone involved: defendants, witnesses, litigators, advocates, both prosecution and defence, the judiciary, and HMCTS staff. And the experience so far can at best be described, I think, as mixed. The Common Platform really hasn't even reached its infancy. It's more in the gestation phase. And if I could perhaps torture this analogy even further, if it ever is to be introduced in full, we have the chance to be involved in writing its DNA. And for that, I need your help. Let me give you a bit of background first to explain why we are where we are. I'll try and be brief. In 2011, the Bar Council produced a working paper on how we thought the criminal justice system could work more efficiently and save some money. It wasn't an entirely selfless exercise, but was undertaken against a background of persistent cuts in legal aid fees for litigators and advocates, as apparently the only way the MOJ could see to save money, other than by selling off court buildings or letting the rest slowly fall down, was to cut our fees. One suggestion we made was to become more paperless, not entirely paperless, but put the paperwork online for everyone to use as they saw fit. This led, after a lengthy process of consultation, development, countless meetings and feedback, to the introduction of the Crown Court digital case system, which has, I think we'd all agree, revolutionised the process of exchanging papers and giving access to court cases. Everything you need for a Crown Court case is available if you have an internet connection or a device with it all downloaded. Now, it's fair to say there was a lot of resistance to the concept, both from people who didn't feel confident about their tech abilities and from others who saw it as loading extra expense onto us, the practitioners, by requiring everyone to get with the 21st century and have a computer. I can vividly recall that the litigators' principal concern was the expense they would incur having to print out the papers for their clients. Now, we didn't get it completely right. There are a lot of flaws in the DCS, but it's important to realize that this is principally down to the fact that to get it up and running at all, and to cater for the mixed tech paper approach, it needed to be fundamentally PDF based, that is, PDF's portable document format. So what we actually did was we worked on what was no more than an electronic document bundling piece of software developed originally for the Supreme Court. That's why the memo function, the entries in the sidebar on the right, is such rubbish. It was in the original software simply as a way to annotate your own version of the online documents, not to pass on messages. And that's why the default option when you do draft a comment is private. You have to change it to widely shared. Has anyone ever chosen tightly shared for? That was designed to be for all members of a team to share an annotation made on their shared file. This is also why it was originally just a document bundling bit of software. It's also why access to multimedia evidence on the DCS is so laborious. One needs to download a document with a hyperlink, click on the hyperlink, and then be taken to a whole different website to access in particular videos. The DCS was never set up to accommodate videos or other multimedia evidence. The Common Platform replacement to the DCS is intended to do away with that. But enough history. What we have is the Crown Court DCS. It doesn't apply to the magistrates' courts, where, of course, 98% of all criminal cases begin and end. Any Crown Court recorder who doesn't sit very often is still rather taken aback if they have to sit on an appeal in the Crown Court from the Magistrates' Court, because there's nothing on the DCS. You get a little buff file, which is usually empty apart from the charge that was proved and just possibly a coherent record of the sentence. You almost feel like you have to break out your quill pen and relearn some Latin. So the key questions are, is the Common Platform a key element of the court reforms? Does it pull together all the elements of the CGS on one platform? And will it replace the Crown Court digital case system? What's it for? Bubbling away in the background has been this grand plan to make the whole of the CGS online from the moment a defendant was charged, summoned, or postally requisitioned to any possible court of appeal hearing. Not only will everything be uploaded there, both the Magistrates' Court and the Crown Court, but all the ongoing processes will take place online on the Common Platform, including the progress and conduct of cases in the Magistrates' Court, the sending of cases to the Crown Court, the progress of the case through the Crown Court, that is the process of the PCMH and PTRs, as well as, of course, storing all the evidence and recording the outcome. And to that end, it's intended to replace 5 separate online tools that currently exist, many of which you may be unaware of. They are Libra, Exhibit, Bench, Court Store, and Digital Markup. These all have to be operated by HMCTS, and by deploying a single platform, this will prevent information having to be copied between these systems, while also cutting down on paper usage. So it's one part, but a key part of the wider £1 billion digital transformation of the court system, including the civil courts. The Lord Chief Justice, no less, has said, and I quote, "The introduction and eventual rollout of the Common Platform to all our criminal courts is vital. We are assured that by HMCTS that it will come good, and it needs to because there is no alternative." That's what the Lord Chief has said. So what's the current situation? Does it do what was promised? Well, as you're probably aware, it hasn't exactly gone as expected. In January 2020, early adopter areas have been confirmed. There were 11 courts serving Croydon, Derby, Guildford, Newcastle, Chester, Bristol and Swansea Crown Courts. The idea was to roll out the system starting with Croydon. It was envisaged this would involve end-to-end testing, including completion in the magistrates' courts and the Crown Courts of summary only, either way offences as well as indictable only offences. Then between April and June 2020, the programme will be evaluated for those 3 months before national rollout later in 2020. Well, since then it has been introduced to more courts, but as we all know, it's not been introduced nationally. It was always intended that the DCS would persist for the time being until fully replaced by the common platform version. Well, what feedback I have had from users from both the defence and the prosecution communities, as well as court staff, has highlighted real problems with the common platform in both magistrates and Crown Courts. Some problems are no more than teething problems. For example, we will have to get used to periodically changing our passwords, as this is pretty routine security for any online system on which people can access and change things. And it's insisted on in the common platform because we actually all have a gateway into a government's IT system, and they're pretty paranoid about security. Other issues are more significant and more fundamental. They can be summarized firstly as difficulty accessing a case at all. Under the old system, anything you do get comes from the prosecution once they knew who the defence solicitor was. Now it goes on to the common platform, and to access the case, one needs to put in a number of bits of data which were entered by the police on charging or requisition. The problem is that unless one has all the correct data, including a unique reference number, a name, and a date of birth, and it matched what the police had entered, it's impossible to get in. And as I'm sure any solicitor will know, clients are not the best at recording URNs. Often their names are misspelt by the police, and sometimes dates of birth are movable feasts. It's somewhat ironic that the CPS, recognizing this was not working from the off, didn't junk their own software to access their own cases as they had intended to do. Instead, they've retained their own document management software and have nothing to do with the common platform. And that perhaps tells you all you need to know about the simple faults with the design. This does mean the CPS are insulated from the access problems dogging defence lawyers, but they're acutely aware that the replacement for the DCS needs to work as well for their advocates as for the defence advocates. So we do have a commonality of interest. Once a solicitor or other defence practitioner does have access, the original design was that only that solicitor could grant access to anyone else, a new user. This access issue, we feel, is typical of the problems that can arise if inadequate consultation takes place. For example, when the DCS was being developed, the first proposal was that similarly, only the instructed solicitor could grant access to a case. We pointed out that if a last-minute change in counsel took place and the instructing solicitor was unavailable, how would we get access? We stressed the best approach was to try to simply replicate the way things have worked forever, where, for example, a clerk could pass on the papers or a barrister could give their papers to their pupil without the instructing solicitor being troubled, provided it was implicit that that was going to be permitted. Well, we pressed very hard for access to the common platform to work the same way. We got pushback from HMCTS, ironically, who said that the access process that had been designed had been deliberately designed the way it was at the request of solicitors to stop other solicitors poaching their clients. This isn't entirely fanciful. CPS lawyers have recently been instructed not to grant access to a defence solicitor who is not the currently instructed solicitor on the record. And this has arisen because someone asked a friendly CPS lawyer for access and was given access when they shouldn't have been. So it does happen that people do poach clients by getting access to the system and then acting on it. I'm still pressing for the system to be changed so that any defence lawyer with case access could grant access to anyone else. It doesn't seem to me that the problem of poaching is going to be created or exacerbated by allowing that, but I can't guarantee it's going to happen. The second major problem, which is even more fundamental, is that often the court isn't able to access the necessary details of the case, or if they could, it froze or crashed. And then even if the court had access to the process of entering all the data as the case was being conducted, it was so cumbersome that it considerably slowed things down. And the design of the online forms was so poor that the possibility of making errors has increased. As I understand it, as a result principally of the in-court problems, in August last year, the rollout was simply halted. Since then, in meetings with HMCTS, we've been assured that everything was on track and the teams were being sorted out. Well, we're now in February 2022, and the program does seem to have stalled, and there's very little hard information being shared. I attended an online meeting last November, so that's 3 months ago, arranged by the CBA chair with members of the Public and Commercial Service Union to discuss the common platform. And I confess, I was very taken aback to hear how serious their concerns are. They informed us that the rollout had been halted on the orders of the SPJ because the system was so unreliable. They told us the SPJ had said that unless the common platform could be shown to work properly, reliably and continuously for 3 weeks, the rollout shouldn't proceed. The unions say that as the system doesn't work properly for 3 hours ago, never mind 3 weeks, the rollout should not only be halted, but the common platform should be withdrawn, as it was simply creating delays in the CGS. And they outline what the issues were. They said it's so full of bugs and so unstable that it can't be relied upon to either work for a court session or accurately record the results of that session, and cases just get lost. They said the entire concept is flawed. Now, as advocates, we don't have much idea how the outcome of court hearings is recorded. There's a lot of backroom activity as well as the work of the clerk or legal advisor in courts, and the process at present only works because the clerk or legal advisor does not have to do everything in real time in court as hearings progress. The common platform, on the other hand, is designed to require the court clerk or legal advisor to do all work in real time. And they say it's simply not feasible. If they work as the common platform intends, it slows court proceedings down dramatically. For example, they say that in Liverpool, court proceedings have been reduced to 1/3 of their previous speed because of the delays created by having to record everything in real time. There are numerous other complaints, and they are contemplating industrial action if the common platform isn't withdrawn from pilot courts, or at the very least, they're provided with more staff and processes to work alongside it to make up for its deficiencies. And they in fact balloted their members in November about strike action unless their demands are met. Those demands include no new cases input on the common platform, disclose feedback from the early adopter sites, which at present is closely restricted to HMCTS, and to disclose the numbers and details of incidents where incorrect results or issues have impacted on other criminal justice stakeholders. On a turnout of 57%, or over 57%, 96.3% of their members said they would support strike action. And that perhaps shows how bad they think things are. And they've written to the CEO of HMCTS demanding immediate suspension of the common platform because of these concerns. Co-signatories to that letter included the CBA, the Criminal Law Solicitors Association, the National Association of Probation Officers, and the Prison Officers Association. So you can see these concerns are very widespread and held by pretty well all the stakeholders in the system other than HMCTS. On the 19th of January, the CEO of HMCTS accepted that the dispute with his staff, who bear the burden of working with this system, which they insist is wholly unfit for its purpose, and should be withdrawn before it causes yet more damage, he accepted that it must be escalated to the next stage of the dispute resolution process, and they're still waiting for this to happen. So where does that leave us? Well, in October last year, the Lord Chief Justice, in a speech to a conference in Wales, said, and I quote, "I'm very conscious of the frustrations that have resulted in some of the magistrates and Crown Courts into which it has been introduced. During August and September, its rollout was paused to enable issues on the system and stability and resilience to be dealt with. That work continues." But he repeated that eventually rollout was vital because there's no alternative. He went on to say the judiciary are in constant contact with the relevant officials at HMCTS to ensure the common platform provides functionality that is required. And the aim is to conclude the rollout in spring of 2022. On the 3rd of February this year, the judiciary were informed that the rollout of the common platform had been paused to allow HMCTS crime programme to, and I quote, "investigate technical problems and to improve overall system performance." The bulletin went on, and again I quote, "No decision has yet been made as to when any further rollout of the common platform will resume. This will be taken only when the senior judiciary have analysed the evidence provided by HMCTS." Well, earlier this month, I spoke to the Crime Reform Deputy Director at HMCTS about this. She was entirely frank and said that all had not gone according to plan, and that the combination of design errors and software problems had resulted in a lot of problems. But she was upbeat and optimistic, saying there had been improvements, things were much better now, and the plan was to extend the pilot to 3 more areas as and when it was appropriate. Although she conceded certain guarantees had been demanded by the judiciary before this could happen, and I assume she was referring to the guarantees that it was working effectively and consistently. But she also said that the HMCTS are begging for feedback from service users, i.e. you and me. And she's provided me with an email to which you can send reports of any issues, as well as observations and comments on what you see as design flaws or problems, or even positive suggestions. She emphasized if you can provide the URN of any case which has had an issue, they can investigate properly. And I'll share with you shortly that there's a phone number and an email to which you can send your observations. Now, whether all this means that the Lord Chief Justice's optimism in October last year was misplaced, or whether another announcement is imminent, I simply don't know. But the CP as it exists at the moment is in a state of suspended animation, but is still operational in many courts, if operational is the right word. One idea of how deep HMCTS have got involved in this common platform is that the budget has risen to at least £300 million, of which over £230 million has been spent. That was the situation last autumn. Now, the HMCTS leadership has assured the government that it will represent big savings in the criminal justice system. So they are heavily committed to it. The last thing HMCTS leadership, or indeed anyone, wants is for the common platform to join the list of overblown IT schemes which have never turned out to be effective in operation and have to be dumped. I'm assured that this will not happen, but I don't think anyone can really give us any guarantees. But certainly nothing is apparently going to happen in the short term. The Crown Court digital case system will not be replaced anytime soon, although the design process is well underway. So where does that leave us? Is it a good scheme which is met with more teething problems than anticipated, which will come good, like the much delayed Jubilee line in London? Or is it an over-ambitious project which, because of its faulty ambition, is doomed to fail? It's very disappointing that the perception of the current state of the Common Platform seems at the moment to be overwhelmingly negative, and the experience for users, so far as it has been reported, is also overwhelmingly disappointing. We have to bear in mind that few people share anecdotes about how well a system has worked. In other words, that they've gone on it and it was unexceptional and perfectly satisfactory. But even allowing for the fact that unhappy experiences make for better stories, and people more naturally complain than compliment, it still seems there are very significant problems to be resolved. HMCTS, as I've said, naturally assisted will come good. One of the known unknowns is the current attitude and input of the senior judiciary to the currently highly unsatisfactory situation. Because they are constitutionally unable to engage politically, it's all but impossible to discern the extent of their support or their opposition to the Common Platform. They alone have the ability to give the green light to the Common Platform to proceed or to stop it in its tracks if it continues to be unfit for its purpose. But the level of secrecy around their stance is disconcerting. We're not given any official information about what will happen next, other than the HMCTS aspirations. As I've told you, the Lord Chief is on record as saying it has to succeed. So we need to keep working to ensure that if it comes to fruition, it works for us, not against us. We're told that design work on the DCS is, as I said, ongoing. We've been attempting to have our input. At the bar, we've made it very clear that we'll do our very best to help achieve the best outcome for advocates and litigators, but not at any cost. The CP has got to be an improvement on the digital case system. We can't sacrifice our ability to be able to work effectively on our cases simply because HMCTS wants to get a piece of software up and running. So far as the existing problems bedeviling the Common Platform in the Magistrates Court are concerned, apart from the issue of access, they affect the courts as much as the advocates. And if they're solved for the court, then one would assume and expect they're solved for the advocates. So it may be reasonable to place our confidence in the judiciary, but we need to remain vigilant. I also bear very much in mind that when the DCS was introduced, there were teething problems. We all had to learn new ways of working. And let's face it, a lot of doom merchants predicted it would never catch on. Well, as I said, it's still got its annoying quirks. But if there are ongoing plans to replace it, we want to work constructively with HMCTS to improve what we have. At the same time, if the Common Platform is going to come fully into operation at some point, we want to work as constructively as possible with HMCTS to help design it so it works for us, litigators and advocates. We're not interested in simply jeering from the sidelines. I have over the years, I think, developed a reasonably positive working relationship with HMCTS, partly because they know I'm not just a technophobe. And whilst I don't shy away from pointing out serious problems and deficiencies, I've shown I'm interested in helping find solutions rather than just grumbling. I've no issue with their willingness to listen. They've always been very keen to get feedback from the bar. I do have concerns about whether the structures are in place to allow for that to happen effectively. So accordingly, the bar has recently teamed up with the CPS, who as part of the civil service have a closer connection with HMCTS than we do. We're having regular meetings with them to try to collaborate on the design of the DCS replacement. It's important to bear in mind that the CPS as litigators face four ways. They have to liaise and coordinate with the police who supply the material. They have to liaise with the court as they serve that material. They have to liaise with their own advocates, whether they're employees or members of the bar, and also with defence litigators on the other side. Now, at the defence bar, we of course want to make sure it works well for contact between us and our instructed solicitors. And a good example is one I've already mentioned, how we get access and transfer access to cases in which we've been instructed. So how can you help? Not just help us, but help yourselves. How can you help to try to make sure the next system works as effectively for the defence community, litigators and advocates, as I think the DCS has to a very large extent? We have a subcommittee in the CBA, which I'm chair, and we certainly can't get all we want, but we do try, whether it's sorting out our problems with ClickShare, remember that, or consulting on remote access by video link. But our main focus at the moment is CP generally and the replacement for the DCS specifically. I welcome any suggestions for change or improvement, as well as any, I hope, succinct complaints about how the CP is working, perhaps could be improved. We've already submitted a lengthy list of things about the DCS, which we think could be changed by way of improvements. But again, if you have a suggestion about the DCS, please feel free to email me. I may not reply to all emails, especially if I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed. And I don't do online tech support either. But without feedback from you, the end users, we don't always know what's going wrong. And we certainly may not think of every possible improvement. So I'm now going to try and share with you the documents that, oh, I can't share it with you because I'm disabled from sharing. If you email Chambers or otherwise contact Chambers, we'll send you a copy of the details, which include, I say, a phone number, and perhaps more constructively and helpfully, an email address, which you can send, as I said, complaints. Oh, I'm now on host. Perhaps I can share. Let's see. I'm going to exit that because I haven't actually located the document in the right place to quickly share. I was preparing it just before we started. As I said, if you email me or email Chambers or otherwise contact Chambers, I'll send you the details. I'm going to try and make them more publicly available as well. And the invitation is a genuine one. They want you to send in details of any problems you've had, either by phone, that includes with registering with the system, or suggestions for improvement. They told me that any suggestions you send in will find their way onto their log of potential DCS improvements, where they'll find in due course their way onto the design team and see if they can be implemented. I myself am in ongoing involvement with HMCTS, and I'll be following these things up to see how we're getting on with improvements in the design. So that's all I have to say about the common platform for today. As I said, this wasn't intended as a how to access a case on DCS, because in theory, you just stick in the URN, defendant's name, and date of birth, and you should get there. In practice, of course, I know it's not that simple. If you've got any questions you want to ask, if you could put them in the chat section where I can see them, I'll try and answer them for you. Otherwise, that's all you'll hear from me.
Paul, thank you very much. And actually, there are just some
Sonal,
questions.
you're muted.
Am I unmuted now?
No, you're not. You're muted again. Unmuted.
According to my test, it's working correctly. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent, thank you. Paul, thank you very much for that. It is very troubling to hear that a system that's cost already £230 million, we can't get it to work for in excess of 3 hours. It's instability issues, it slows down proceedings, it's resulting in strike action that has been balloted in really large numbers. The push from the powers that be appears to be, because there's no alternative, we're going to crack on. And so the feeling I get from what you've been saying is that because we've spent £230 million already, we're going to crack on and perhaps throw more good money after bad. Can we not simply use as an alternative, because the need to have a unified system, perhaps most of us can understand, but in those circumstances, can we not have an improved version of the digital case system? I appreciate that it has its flaws. Can we not turn the digital case system into a better version of the common platform? And is that something that's been considered by the powers that be?
Well, it's important to remember that the principle behind the common platform is it's an online collaborative platform where effectively people work on it. I mean, obvious example is, you know, filling in PCMH forms or that sort of thing, or it's a way in which materials transferred from the Magistrates Court to the Crown Court. There are a whole raft of processes that we never see, which HMCTS are involved in, where they move information around. I mentioned the 5 platforms they currently use, or none of which talk to each other, and they have to transfer material, you know, manually from one to the other. And their plan is to replace all that with the common platform. And to some extent, the DCS, or the replacement of the DCS, is the kind of last step in the process. As I've suggested, the DCS was only ever an online sort of depository for an electronic version of paper. The replacement will be very similar, I believe. I can't see why it will be fundamentally different, but it's supposed to be integrated with the common platform. So they're not interested in spending money on redesigning the DCS unless and until it's a wholly redesigned version that integrates with the common platform.
And as far as the current use of the DCS, one problem that often faces us, and actually when it happens, because it's so rare now, it is always a bit of a surprise that you're going to old school paper versions, as if, for example, you have a private prosecutor and they can't access the digital case system. Is it intended that the common platform can be accessed by private prosecutors, or is that something that's currently unknown?
As far as I know, yes. You may or may not be aware that a lot of processes have gone online in the civil courts. So, for example, small claims are, some of them are currently dealt with online. The whole idea is that you log on and you then start entering your material onto an online form, and the whole process takes place in that fashion. As I understand it, that's the idea for the common platform. It's different, of course, because it's not just 2 private parties engaging with the court, communicating with each other. There are significant privacy issues involved with it being a prosecution. So we've got a question from Carolina. The question is, will the problems where the police say they've uploaded material but it somehow doesn't appear go away? Well, yeah. Again, I can keep saying in theory, yes, although ironically, I've been told by the CPS that they're frustrated because they're currently told by the police they've uploaded stuff onto the common platform, and even the CPS can't see it, which is another reason why the CPS have maintained their own private document management systems. That's an example of how the common platform has impacted on the CPS itself. So Helen Newman has asked, so the Crown Court wouldn't use the CPS, they would use an integrated version of the CCDCS. Well, yes and no. The Crown Court would use the common platform. The common platform will be everything to everyone. And what you might call the document depository, the place where the papers are, will be part of the common platform. Quite how they manage the switchover, I don't know. And no one shared that with me yet, but in due course, at the moment you log onto the DCS, and there are cases there you find your case. In future, you'll log onto the common platform as you do now if you've got a case on the common platform, and that is how you will access the paperwork which currently is in a form on the CCDCS. I think it's a gleam in the eyes of the software engineers that it will look fundamentally different. I hope it looks significantly different because the DCS is a bit clunky in format and design. What we want to do is to make sure that the replacement, I'll call it the document depository for the sake of argument, the document depository part of the common platform, we're hoping will be an improvement on the DCS and not something that's worse than the DCS. Some people say, how could anything be worse than the DCS? But
well, that leads into Michelle Simpson's question, which is, why can't the common platform programmers take the best practice parts of the CCDCS, i.e. the search facilities that work, the inviting processes, and so the bits of the DCS that we like, why can't they be incorporated? Because isn't that the feedback, in fact, that they're inviting? they have the feedback already because they know the bits of the DCS that do work.
Absolutely. I mean, what I anticipate is, as I've said, that the document depository part of the common platform will not be fundamentally different from the DCS. What we're engaged in, trying to be involved in the design process, is to get rid of some of the buttons, for example, which are unnecessary. I mean, I for one think that in the index part on the left-hand panel, the index areas where it says key statements and key exhibits, I think is redundant. So the idea is to get rid of things that don't work or don't work very well, or which are only there for historic purposes, and instead put in things which aren't there, which would work better. I'm absolutely sure the search facility will remain, and that's a fundamental part of any online process. And also, the idea is to replace the memo panel on the right with a far more effective and efficient messaging service that will be part of the common platform, whether it's in the document depository or somewhere separate. I suspect it'll be somewhere separate, which I hope won't throw too many people out.
Paul, you mentioned that one of the limitations of the digital case system was its reliance on PDF. And of course, when you're using a PDF document, there are limitations on onward links that you can use from a particular document. Are we right to understand, firstly, that Common Platform won't use a PDF system? And if that's right, as its core, will we be able to access, for example, a statement of a witness? And when the statement refers to an exhibit, would we be able to click on the exhibit link and as though by magic, the exhibit will open up on our screen in a separate window? Is that a little too ambitious?
Well, again, I imagine, I haven't yet seen the next iteration of the document depository that will be the common platform. But first of all, I'm assuming that the documents, if you want to call them that, will be available to download as PDFs, as they are now. We've made it clear to the designers that most people, can't speak for solicitors, I can for barristers, most people work on a downloaded version of the papers. The original designers was quite surprised about this. They thought that we did everything online. We said, no, we download it and then work. So I imagine things will still be downloadable as PDF documents. The second part of your question, which is, well, will there be hyperlinks? So you can just click on something, or take you straight to the video or straight to the audio recording. Again, I'd be very surprised if there weren't. The only reason that they're not available on the DCS is because the architecture doesn't allow for it. It will be very odd if an online system didn't have a hyperlink on it to take you to what you need.
And Carolina asked that in fraud cases with call data, it would be useful to have things downloadable as Excel, for example, because we don't always have that now. So it's often converted to a PDF onto a system, but of course, when you download it as a PDF, it's not searchable. Sometimes they're put on as an Excel, but very rarely. And in those circumstances, presumably the new iteration of the system, as this promises to be, will allow for an Excel document to be downloaded so we can all use the search functions for example, call data.
Well, there are different solutions to that. Of course, PDFs are searchable. The way in which what are obviously start off as Excel documents get converted to PDF and then spread over sort of 3 or 4 pages laterally is mad. But that's down to whoever uploads it. I mean, for example, I would think a good solution would be that you could act on the CP. You could make a request to the prosecuting authority for the Excel original of whatever document it was you were looking at. Whether they're actually uploading an Excel version doesn't seem to me to be the key issue. The key issue is, can you just click on something and say, could I have the Excel formatted version of this, please, sent to me, or download it to be downloadable? Well,
I know from my own experience that is often what's asked for, with the Excel being the actual raw data, and it's not always met positively. You've got the version, what more do you need? And so, you know, if we can get it, it's hard enough as it is, and if we can skip that step, bearing in mind the time that it takes, often the resistance that we are faced, then of course that would be of assistance.
I mean, that's probably not a tech issue, because it goes back to the person who has the original Excel document will be the analyst who's got it from the data, the service provider. And quite often I get blank stares from prosecutors when I say, can I have the Excel version? They don't even know what that is. It's all a question of trying to create and implement systems that enable requests, reasonable requests, to be passed on and actioned effectively. At the end of the day, on that particular point, you're in the hands of the prosecuting authority as to what they'll provide, not really what's going to be on the common platform. I rather suspect that you won't have automatically uploaded a whole host of Excel documents. I might be pleasantly surprised when they are, but I suspect not.
And finally, unless any other questions pop up, we know that the rollout was halted. We know that we've not had any news about the continued rollout since February. As we sit here now today, are you able to tell our attendees as to a timescale of when the national rollout will continue, or do you remain in the dark? No,
I remain. I'm in the dark as everyone else. I've quoted to you what the person responsible for HMCTS has said, which is we expect to roll out to more trial courts this spring. Also, the somewhat gnomic pronouncement of the senior judiciary, who said they're not going to allow it until they've analysed the data and received certain assurances. My gut feeling is that the senior judiciary are well aware of the fundamental problems, and they're not prepared to see the system that they are effectively running as a judiciary further compromised by an IT system that doesn't work properly. So unless until it does work properly, I don't think the rollout will be pursued.
Thank you, Paul. I don't think I see any more questions. Can I please thank you for, on behalf of all of us, for a really, really informative update. It is troubling that we are in February 2022 and we are still in the dark on a system that has cost so much money. To all of those attending today, of course, we do hope that if it does roll out, then our next webinar will be on the access of it and to identify the flaws, identify the plus and minuses. And if Paul hasn't by that stage got a common platform case, I think our clerks have probably heard that what he needs is a brief in Swansea to do that. And I'm sure Paul will be delighted. So
as long as I can do it by remote access, I'm
quite happy. Well, thank you very much for attending, and the details will be available from Chambers if you need them. Please contact us. We'll provide you the email address and contact details, and it may be that we can find a way of putting those details onto our website. So check in the next 24 hours, and we hopefully will be able to sort that out for you. And thanks again, Paul, for today.
Thank you, Sonal.
Thank you.